Humans have always lived under the sun, relying on its warmth and light for survival. From ancient civilizations that carefully oriented their homes to capture sunlight, to 19th century scientists who discovered that sunlight could generate electricity, and finally to modern solar farms that power entire cities. This is the history of solar power. Humanity's relationship with solar energy began with survival. Archaeological evidence shows that as early as 7000 BCE, settlements were deliberately positioned to make the most of sunlight. Across the world, people independently discovered that the sun could be used as a reliable source of heat. In ancient China, houses were oriented southward to capture winter sunlight, while indigenous peoples in the American Southwest built cliff dwellings between 900 and 1300 CE beneath rock overhangs that shaded them in summer and welcomed low-angle winter sunlight. These early builders mastered what modern engineers call passive solar design, using orientation, geometry, and thermal mass long before the science behind it was understood. Beyond heating, ancient civilizations experimented with concentrating sunlight. One of the most famous stories dates to 212 BCE, during the siege of Syracuse, when the mathematician Archimedes allegedly used polished bronze mirrors to focus sunlight onto Roman ships. While the historical accuracy is debated, modern experiments show that focused sunlight can indeed ignite materials. After antiquity, progress in solar technology slowed. From the fall of the Roman Empire through the early modern period, energy systems relied on wood, animal labour, wind and water, and later coal. Interest in solar energy returned during the Enlightenment. In 1767, Swiss scientist Horace Benedict de Saussure built the first documented solar collector, a blackened box covered with multiple layers of glass. When exposed to sunlight, it reached temperatures high enough to boil water. This experiment demonstrated the greenhouse effect and marked the beginning of modern solar research. One quiet laboratory experiment in 1839 changed the future of energy forever. French physicist Alexandre Edmond Becquerel, working with metal electrodes submerged in an electrolyte solution, noticed something unexpected. When light struck the apparatus, the electrical current increased. Becquerel had discovered the photovoltaic effect, the principle that light itself could generate electricity. Progress continued slowly. In 1876, scientists William Grills Adams and Richard Evans Day demonstrated that selenium could produce electricity directly from sunlight. The current was small, but the implication was enormous. Light itself was an energy source. In 1883, American inventor Charles Fritz transformed theory into hardware by building the world's first true solar cell. Using selenium coated with an extremely thin layer of gold, Fritz created a device that converted sunlight directly into electricity. Fritz believed solar power would one day rival coal, a claim that seemed wildly optimistic in an age dominated by steam engines and fossil fuels. Yet history would eventually prove him right. Solar power could not advance without understanding the nature of light. In 1905, Albert Einstein explained the photoelectric effect, proposing that light consisted of discrete packets of energy called photons. This discovery provided the theoretical foundation for photovoltaic technology and later earned Einstein the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. The turning point for modern solar power arrived in 1954 when Bell Laboratories unveiled the first practical silicon solar cell. Developed by Darrell Chapin, Calvin Fuller, and Gerald Pearson, the cell achieved an efficiency of about 6%, an extraordinary leap from selenium designs. These cells were astonishingly expensive, costing hundreds of dollars per watt, but they possessed one priceless quality: reliability. Solar cells had no moving parts, required no fuel, and could operate continuously in harsh environments. That reliability made solar power indispensable for space exploration. In 1958, the Vanguard I satellite became the first spacecraft powered by solar cells. While battery-powered satellites failed after weeks, Vanguard transmitted data for years. Solar power had proven itself where no other energy source could compete. Solar power's next transformation was driven not by science, but by geopolitics. In 1973, the global oil crisis exposed the fragility of fossil fuel dependence. Energy prices soared, and governments suddenly began searching for alternatives. During this period, engineer Elliot Berman led efforts to dramatically reduce the cost of solar cells by simplifying manufacturing and using lower purity silicon. As a result, photovoltaic prices fell from nearly $100 per watt to around $20 per watt during the 1970s. Although solar was still expensive compared to coal and oil, it became viable for remote locations. Most importantly, solar power had escaped the laboratory and entered the real world. When oil prices stabilized in the 1980s, funding declined, but the knowledge, manufacturing techniques, and confidence gained during the crisis remained. The final transformation of solar power occurred quietly but decisively. Beginning in the 1990s, government policies in countries like Germany and Japan guaranteed long-term prices for solar electricity. At the same time, manufacturing began to scale. Automation improved yields, silicon processing became more efficient, and factories grew larger. By the early 2000s, global photovoltaic capacity exceeded 1 gigawatt. The most dramatic changes came in the late 2000s and early 2010s when massive manufacturing capacity, particularly in China, drove costs down by more than 90%. Solar electricity reached grid parity, becoming cheaper than fossil fuels in many regions. This moment marked the completion of solar power's long journey. What began as a scientific curiosity had become one of the world's fastest-growing energy sources. Today, research into perovskite cells, building integrated photovoltaics, and space-based solar power suggests that solar energy is still evolving. Utility-scale solar farms produced gigawatts of power, while rooftop systems became common in homes and businesses. Advances in battery storage began addressing solar power's dependence on daylight. The history of solar power is defined by pivotal moments spread across millennia, each building on the last. From ancient passive heating to space-age photovoltaics and modern solar farms, the story of solar energy reflects humanity's growing understanding of nature and our search for sustainable power. If you enjoyed this video about the history of solar power, like, subscribe, and let me know what topic you would like to see next.